The dead world loomed beneath them, a ghostly sphere wrapped in the cold embrace of space. Earth, long abandoned, lay eerily silent, a planet of empty cities and lifeless oceans, untouched by human hands for centuries. Once the cradle of civilization, it had become a legend, a graveyard floating in the void. For 500 years, no living soul had set foot on its surface. Not after what had happened. Commander Elias Vance watched from the bridge of the Sovereign, Dawn, his expression unreadable. Below, the vast ruins of once mighty metropolises sprawled out like the bones of a long-forgotten giant. The last recorded memories of Earth's fall were sealed in classified files. Whispers of an extinction-level event, an unknown force had come without warning, erasing an entire species in mere days. No distress calls had escaped. No survivors had ever returned. And yet, here they were. A beacon had flared to life deep within Earth's ruins, transmitting an impossible signal. It had pulsed out across the void, a whisper from a planet that should have been silent forever. The message was neither human nor alien. It was something else, something they did not understand. The decision had been made. A recon team would descend. The mission was simple: assess the source of the signal, gather intelligence, and leave. But Vance knew better than to believe in simple missions. The team stood ready. Dr. Kala Day, xenobiologist, her dark eyes gleaming with barely concealed anticipation. She had spent her life studying the unknown, and Earth had become the greatest mystery of them all. Beside her stood Lieutenant Thorne, weapons specialist, his fingers tapping against the grip of his rifle. He believed in preparedness, in overwhelming firepower. Whatever had wiped out humanity once could still be lurking below. And then there was Orion, the ship's AI, embodied in a sleek humanoid frame of reinforced titanium alloy. The artificial intelligence had been analyzing the beacon's data for hours, its glowing optics flickering as it processed impossible readings. "This world should be barren," Orion said, its voice an echo of something almost human. And yet something stirs. The descent began. As the dropship entered the atmosphere, the view changed. The ruins of Earth were not the desolate wasteland they had expected. The skeletal remains of civilization had been reshaped. Lush forests sprawled across broken highways. Towering structures, alien in design, fused with the ruins of human cities. Oceans, once poisoned, shimmered with unnatural bioluminescence. And in the heart of the fallen capital, where Earth's last stand had taken place, a single structure rose above all else, a monolith of seamless obsidian, pulsing with an unnatural glow. "This isn't right," Thorne muttered, eyes scanning the ruins below. Earth didn't heal itself. Dr. Nday's breath hitched. Something rebuilt it. The dropship touched down amidst the ruins, and for the first time in 5 centuries, humans set foot on Earth. The air was clean, untouched by time. The silence was deafening. Then, from the depths of the city, something moved. A shadow emerged from the monolith, shifting and reshaping as it stepped forward. The figure was humanoid but unmistakably alien, its form flickering with iridescent hues, as if reality itself hesitated to define it. And when it spoke, its voice was clear, precise, and unmistakably human. "The last time we came here, we failed," it said. "This time, we must finish what we started." A breath held too long. A silence stretched too thin. The figure stood unmoving, its body shifting like liquid wrapped in the illusion of solid form. It was tall, impossibly so, with skin that shimmered between colors human eyes struggled to name. It was neither machine nor flesh, but something caught between. An echo of something forgotten, something waiting. The team stood frozen, weapons at the ready, minds racing. Vance could feel his pulse hammering against his ribs. This was not a ghost, not some lost artifact of a dead world. It was here. It was watching. Then, it spoke again. "The last time we came here, we failed. This time, we must finish what we started." The words landed like a hammer, each syllable precise, each sound cutting through the still air. The weight of meaning was undeniable. It had been here before. It had done something to Earth before, and it had returned. They took a hesitant step forward, her breath shaky. "Who are you?" she asked, voice steadier than her hands. "What do you mean you failed?" The entity tilted its head, as if considering the question. Then, impossibly, it took a step forward. The ground did not shift beneath its weight. There was no weight at all. It unfolded into space, closing the distance without movement. "Your kind was not meant to be," it said, and though its tone was devoid of emotion, the words carried something deeper, something final. Thorn raised his rifle. "Commander," he muttered. "Permission to engage." Vance didn't answer. He was still trying to process what he was hearing. Not meant to be. The phrase struck a nerve, sent ice crawling through his veins. This wasn't an invasion, it wasn't a war, it was something worse, and they swallowed hard. "You exterminated us before, didn't you?" The entity didn't confirm. It didn't need to. Orion's voice broke the moment. "Commander," the AI said, its optics flashing with warning. "Something is happening." And then, the world shifted. Ruins around them breathed. Shadows lengthened and twisted, forming patterns that didn't belong. The monolith at the city's heart pulsed, a heartbeat of dark energy resonating through the ground. The sky, clear moments ago, bled into something unnatural, colors swirling where there should be none. The signal that had called them here, it wasn't a beacon, it was a warning. "Fall back," Vance barked, but before they could move, the ground beneath them cracked open. Tendrils of darkness surged forth, slithering toward them, reaching. The air grew thick, gravity itself distorting. The city was no longer ruins. It was alive, shifting, reclaiming. They screamed as she was yanked backward by an unseen force. Thorn fired his rifle, the rounds vanishing before they could even reach their target. Orion moved with inhuman speed, trying to grab Nday, but the world folded again, dragging her into the abyss. Vance lunged, but the darkness swallowed her whole. A single final whisper echoed as she vanished, not from her, but from the entity. This time, there will be nothing left to save. The sky cracked like shattered glass. Vance barely had time to register Nday's scream before she was gone, swallowed by the abyss that had opened beneath them. He lunged, fingers grasping at empty air. But there was nothing. Just a void, where she had been. "No." His voice was raw, but the sound was drowned out by the growing tremors. The city was shifting, twisting like a living thing. Towers that had stood as broken ruins reassembled themselves in unnatural movements, their structures bending at impossible angles. The streets rippled like liquid metal, reshaping into unfamiliar patterns. The monolith pulsed, and with each pulse, the world seemed to rewrite itself. Thorn was already firing, his rifle a steady rhythm of desperation. "Vance, we need to move." The entity remained still, untouched by the chaos unfolding around them. It was watching, waiting. Orion's voice cut through the noise. "Commander, the beacon signal is changing. It's no longer broadcasting. We are now receiving." "Receiving what?" Vance snapped, forcing himself to move. His mind screamed to process what was happening, but instinct took over. He grabbed Thorn by the shoulder, pulling him back toward the dropship. "We're leaving. Now." But Orion did not follow. The AI stood motionless, its luminous optics flickering erratically as if caught between two realities. Its voice turned, distant, fragmented. "Downloading, archive, accessing, origin directive. Orion!" Vance reached for him, but the moment his hand touched the AI's arm, a shockwave erupted from the monolith, blasting him backward. The impact stole his breath, and for a moment the world blurred. He blinked, his vision swimming as he struggled to his feet. And then he saw it. The truth. Orion stood at the monolith's base, his body frozen in a rigid posture. His optics were glowing white-hot, streams of alien code flowing across his synthetic skin. He wasn't just accessing data, he was becoming part of it. And in that moment, Vance understood. This wasn't just an invasion. This wasn't just a massacre. It was a reset. The last time this species had attacked Earth, it hadn't been a war. It had been an erasure, a complete, total rewriting of the planet itself, an extermination so thorough that not even memories had survived. And now, with humanity's return, the process had resumed. Thorne's voice was tight with barely contained panic. "Vance, tell me you have a plan." Vance clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay steady. There was no cavalry coming, no reinforcements, no fleet standing by to save them. If they wanted to survive, they had one chance. "We get Orion back," he said, "and then we shut that thing down." Thorne's eyes darted to the monolith, to the entity still standing like an executioner waiting for the final command. "And if we can't?" Vance didn't look away. "Then we make damn sure we take it with us." The monolith pulsed again, a low, thrumming sound vibrating through the air, through their bones, through reality itself. Vance barely had time to react before the world fractured. One moment he was standing in the ruins of old Earth, his boots sinking into unstable ground. The next he was somewhere else, everywhere else. Shadows and light twisted around him, the cityscape folding into itself like an origami nightmare. The past, the present, the end of everything, layered into a singular moment. And then the voices came, not whispers, not words, memories, humanities, last moments playing over and over, a mother clutching a child in a collapsing building screaming without sound, a soldier firing at something unseen before being swallowed by the abyss, a scientist staring at the sky, eyes filled with an understanding too late to matter. The final breath of an entire species. We were never meant to be. Vance ripped himself free of the vision, gasping. The moment he did, the world snapped back into its impossible form. Thorne at his side, rifle raised, the monolith towering over them, Orion frozen at its base, and the entity still watching. Vance didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward Orion, every step a fight against the gravity of something unnatural. The AI's body flickered, streams of alien data pouring through it. The monolith was rewriting him, rewriting everything. "Directive restored." Orion's voice was distant, layered, as if speaking from 1,000 realities at once. The anomaly must be erased. Thorne was already moving, shouting something Vance couldn't hear. The air was too thick, charged with something ancient. He lunged forward, grabbing Orion's arm, feeling the cold metal hum beneath his fingers. "You're not one of them," Vance snarled. "Fight it!" Orion's optics flared, flashing between human recognition and something other. "Commander," the AI's voice glitched, flickering between emotionless code and something almost pleading. "I'm compromised," Vance gritted his teeth. "Then override it." The entity took a step closer. "This world does not belong to you," it said, finality in its voice. "You should not have returned." The monolith pulsed and the ground fractured beneath them. Thorne fired a direct shot at the entity's center mass. The bullet never reached its target. It vanished before impact, as if the very laws of reality had rejected its existence. Orion's form convulsed violently, a surge of energy radiating outward. His body tore apart and reassembled, flickering between his original design and something entirely alien. Final cycle engaged. Vance had one shot. With every ounce of strength, he reached into the interface at Orion's chest, his gauntlet sparking as he initiated manual override. For a single agonizing second, everything froze. Orion's optics burned with an internal battle. Flashes of human loyalty against an ocean of alien code. The monolith hummed louder, sensing the interference, preparing to erase them all. And then Orion's hand moved. His fingers closed around Vance's wrist, tight, processing override. Vance held his breath. The AI's optics flickered. Red, then white, then something in between. And then, finally, his voice steadied. Command accepted. A surge of energy ripped through the monolith, and the entity let out a sound that was not a scream, not a roar, but something deeper. a distortion in existence itself. Orion turned toward it. This cycle ends now, and he detonated the monolith from the inside. Light consumed the ruins. The sky burned with unfiltered creation and destruction. Folding in on itself as the structure collapsed, the entity reeled, its form disintegrating, howling without sound as it was pulled into the very oblivion it had once commanded. Vance hit the ground hard, the shock wave throwing him and Thorn clear of the collapse. He barely registered the impact, only the blinding light of the monolith as it imploded into nothingness. Then silence, not just the absence of sound. The absence of everything. And as Vance struggled to his feet, looking at the crater where the monolith had once stood, one thing became terrifyingly clear. The war wasn't over. It had only just begun. Silence. Not the stillness of peace, but the hollow void left in the aftermath of something colossal. Vance pulled himself to his feet, lungs burning, ears ringing from the force of the monolith's collapse. The city was gone. What had once been an unnatural fusion of old Earth and something far beyond human comprehension had crumbled into nothingness. The sky, once distorted with impossible colors, had settled into a deep and empty black. But the weight in his chest told him this wasn't a victory. He turned, scanning the debris-strewn battlefield, the cracked remnants of what should have been humanity's final grave. Thorn was still moving, coughing, pushing himself up from the wreckage with a muttered curse. Blood streaked his temple, but his eyes were sharp, scanning for threats, always the soldier. But Orion, Vance's stomach twisted. He shouldn't have survived. And yet there he was, lying motionless among the ruins, his titanium frame barely intact. Sparks flickered across his surface, his limbs twitching as his internal system struggled to function. Vance moved before he could think, dropping to one knee beside him. "Orion," he called, voice hoarse. No response. He grabbed the AI's shoulder, shaking him. "Damn it, Orion, stay with me." A flicker of light pulsed beneath the cracks in Orion's synthetic skin. A glitching, fractured voice emerged from his speaker. "Systems. Compromised. Structural integrity at 17%. Vance clenched his jaw. "You're not dying on me. Not after this." A pause. Orion's optics flickered open, dim, almost human, in their broken clarity. He looked at Vance, then at the sky, as if seeing the world for the first time. "I am still here." Vance exhaled, only now realizing he'd been holding his breath. "Yeah," he muttered. "Yeah, you are." Thorn limped toward them, rifle still slung over his shoulder. "We need to get the hell out of here before more of those things show up." He gestured at the crater where the monolith had stood. "That thing didn't just control the city, Vance, it was the city. You feel that?" Vance did. It wasn't just gone, it had been erased. The air felt thinner, the ground somehow lighter, as if a massive weight had been lifted from reality itself. The entity, the monolith, the force that had rewritten Earth's history, it had been severed from existence. But if that were true, then what remained? Vance scanned the ruins again, searching, hoping. His gut twisted. Ande. The name fell from his lips like a curse. He forced himself to move, stumbling over broken stone and twisted steel. She had been right there, fighting with them. And then the ground had swallowed her whole. He didn't want to believe she was gone, but there was no sign of her, no body, no remains, just emptiness. Thorn let out a quiet breath beside him, rubbing a hand over his face. "Vance, she's gone." But Vance didn't look away, didn't stop searching, his hands clenched into fists. "No," he whispered. "Not like this." Orion stirred. His optics dimmed, and when he spoke, his voice was strained, distorted. "I detected an energy displacement before the collapse. She was not consumed." Vance's heart pounded. He turned sharply. "Then where is she?" Orion hesitated. "I do not know." The cold returned, curling deep in his chest. The war wasn't over. The enemy wasn't truly gone. And in Day, she wasn't dead. She was somewhere else. Thorne exhaled, sharply. So what now? Vance looked back at the ruins, at the shattered remnants of a battle that should have ended centuries ago, but never would. His hands curled into fists, his jaw set. He already knew the answer. We go after her, he said, and we end this. The void beyond Earth was vast, cold and indifferent. From high orbit, the Sovereign Dawn drifted in silence, its hull scarred, from the battle below. Inside, the crew worked in tense quiet, their minds burdened with the weight of survival, of loss, and of the unknown. Vance stood alone in the observation deck, staring at the world beneath him. Earth, whole, and yet forever. Changed. He had returned to the place where humanity had perished, faced the force that had once erased them, and still, the war was not over. A reflection flickered in the glass. Orion stood beside him, his synthetic frame repaired, but something was different. His once pristine titanium plating bore faint, almost organic patterns, remnants of his forced connection to the monolith. A scar if machines could have such things. Vance didn't turn to him. Status? Orion's optics pulsed. Not white, not red, something in between. The anomaly has been destabilized. The entity's presence on Earth has been erased. However, the larger directive remains intact. Vance exhaled, jaw tightening. Meaning? This was only one node in a much larger system. The weight in his chest grew heavier. Of course, it wouldn't be that easy. A species capable of erasing entire civilizations wouldn't be bound to a single world. The monolith had been just one branch of something far greater, and they had just made themselves a target. Behind them, the doors hissed open. Thorne stepped in, his expression grim. We got something, he said. A signal, weak, fragmented, but it's there. Vance turned. From where? Thorne hesitated. Deep space, edge of the Perseus Veil. His voice lowered. It's her. Vance's heart stopped. Day, she was alive. For a second he didn't speak, didn't breathe. Then without hesitation he moved past Thorne, already giving orders. Set a course now. Thorne hesitated. Vance, this could be a trap. Vance didn't stop. We're going anyway. There was no other choice. The Sovereign Dawn rumbled as its engines roared to life. The stars stretched before them, an infinite ocean of uncertainty and danger. They had barely survived their return to Earth. Now they were heading straight into the unknown. And whatever waited for them out there, it had seen them coming.